When it comes to From Software games, I really did miss the initial hype train. I remember hearing all these stories about Dark Souls and how it was so difficult and how people loved them so much, whether it was Dark Souls 1, 2 or 3, and even Sekiro, once that came out. I always thought to myself, it must be overhyped because people are just looking for a way to justify spending so much time on a game that maybe was difficult as a gimmick. But boy was I wrong. So here's my video on why I love Dark Souls 3. One thing I've really liked about Dark Souls is the atmosphere that it manages to create. The world really does make you feel small and makes you feel like you're just a lowly ashen one on an impossible task. The world is dark, but gives you just that slight glimmer of light to hold on to for hope. You've been tasked with bringing the embers of the Lord back to their thrones because they've abandoned their duties, and even the size of the thrones are just humongous. You go through these huge castles spanning for miles that block out the horizon, letting only a glimmer of the light come through, and you hold on to that. The libraries are huge, holding vast knowledge that you'll never be able to comprehend. It just fills you with awe and dread at the same time, until eventually you go up against these enemies that are just gargantuan in size, in power, and you have to fight tooth and nail to get past them. The game never stops making you feel small, until there's just nothing left but the dark sun in the sky, an ashen battlefield, and the soul of Cinder itself for you to take on. But still, somehow, you still feel small. This encaged arena, the crumbling world in the background, and this foe before you that is throwing everything that you've ever seen in this world at you at once. Even when you've got to the final challenge and you feel like you deserve to be there, you still feel like the underdog that's got a mountain to climb. And there's really not been any other game that I've experienced that with before. Many other games, you get to the end and you feel like you're this super powered hero, but in Dark Souls, it's just another challenge. One of the other things that I really love about Dark Souls that ties in with that feeling of the challenge is the learning curve that the game throws at you. On the screen now is me fighting Gundyr for the very first time. It's my first time playing Dark Souls 3, and my stamina management is all over the place. My sense of speed of rolling and when to dodge is completely non-existent. And because of this, I get greedy, I go in, I'm not patient enough, and I do end up dying. So yeah, that's not exactly the best way that you want to go about it, but a nice parry there on New Game Plus 2. Just going through it, there's just a lot more confidence, a lot more understanding of when to dodge, apart from that one, how my character can move, parry, and it really is night and day. You get the feeling of what your limits are, and the sense of satisfaction that comes with is really off the charts, and that's one thing that Dark Souls really does well. Because it doesn't hold your hand, you really feel like you have achieved something when you take down a boss or when you get past a tough area, and you can feel yourself just getting better and better, and that just makes you fall in love with the game more and more the further you go on. Of course, one of the things that I loved about Dark Souls 3 is the lore, the story behind some of these bosses and some of these areas that you visit in the game. A great example is Slave Knight Gale, someone who is a big part of the DLCs in the game. He's left the painted world of Ariandel on a mission to help the painter create a new painted world, a better world. So he leaves, he attempts to find a good pigment for her to use as a painting, eventually going mad on his quest, You know, he consumes the dried blood of the pygmy lords. It warps his mind, it warps his body, and he becomes this shell of his former self that is just imbued with power and will take on anything in this path, particularly the Ashen One, so that he can complete his mission and help the painter create a new world. Another story is that of Aldrich, the Devourer of Gods. Aldrich was a former cleric who was having visions of another age, this age of the deep sea, he called it, where humans were falling to the lowest depths and their souls were being used to bind the world. In an attempt to make sure that he could bring those souls to bind the world together, Aldrich believed that he needed to consume humans, both their flesh and their soul. So he was given a steady stream of sacrifices of who he would eat, but this of course came with a grave consequence of him just becoming a creature of rotting flesh. He managed to retain his sentience and his sanity throughout this, but because of his vast power that he'd managed to accumulate through his visions and the cannibalism, he was chosen to become one of the Lords of Cinder, purely because he was so powerful, a duty which he would then betray, which is why the Ashen One is sent to take his soul and bring it back to the throne later. And then we have what is probably my favourite story within Dark Souls 3, and that's the one of the Nameless King, a god of war from the great age of war, who fought against the ancient dragons alongside Gwyn. It is rumoured that Gwyn is the Nameless King's father, but because of the Nameless King's betrayal to leave Gwyn's army and join the ancient dragons, his name was stripped from the history books as if he had never existed, leaving absolutely no trail of the Heir of Lightning. He befriended the King of Storms, who would become his closest dragon friend, who he would ride into battles, striking fear into the hearts of the dragon slayers and the kingdom that he swore to protect. Speaking of kingdoms, there are hints that the twin princes liked each other a little bit more than just brothers, but let's just gloss over that fact. And the final thing I love about Dark Souls is the music. Dancer in particular is a great example. You start off a single vocal track, a single instrumental track that's light, yet sinister and graceful at the same time, matching Dancer perfectly as she shows you just how vicious she is with that single sword. But as you enter the second phase, and Dancer brings out her second weapon, the second vocal track, the second more somber instrumental track comes in, providing great balance between the light and the dark, matching each other perfectly, balanced as any great dancer would be, as she unleashes her true barrage of skills upon you. But if we're speaking about how music ascends a boss fight to the next level, you can't go into this segment without mentioning Sister Frieda.
Fret not, Father, we have no need of thy flail. 'Tis only the flame quivering at misguided ash. Please avert thine eyes. I will snuff out these ashes for good.
This first phase starts off controlled, soft, unsettling and menacing, tempered like Frieda's fighting style, elegant and flourishing between moments of anticipation. The soft, elegant, controlled music takes a step back as we go into phase 2. Frieda's music is still playing. She has been brought back, she is still part of this fight, but the overarching sound is the chorus of Ariandel's theme, playing as his unbridled rage at the Ashen One daring to kill Frieda is brought to life by an ensemble, not something that a single voice or single instrument could portray. It requires a whole ensemble to really express his level of rage. This matches the way that he fights perfectly. He's just clamoring to try and take down the Ashen One, recklessly throwing his fire and his bowl. These reckless actions leaving him exhausted, open to riposts. As Frida rises for the second time, the marriage of the two soundtracks comes together. No longer are the drums as loud and reckless and powerful. They're an underlying, driving force as Frida harnesses all of her power, still controlled but now stronger than ever. She's unleashing the full arsenal of her fighting style, the vocals arching over, lasting long. The strings also relentless. There is no downtime. It is constantly going at a tempo that matches Frida perfectly. No longer is she waiting. No longer are you anticipating. The marriage of the male and the female vocals coming together to remind you that you're not fighting simply one soul. You are fighting two connected and unbridled power that you've never seen before in this game. It truly brings this fight to life. So there you have it. They're the reasons why I loved Dark Souls 3 and the Souls games in general. What I'm really excited for is what FromSoft are going to come out with next. That includes the Demon Souls remake. That looks super exciting, and I'm looking forward to seeing some more footage from that. If there's anything that you think I've missed in this video though, feel free to put that down below in the comments. Tell me what your favourite things about Dark Souls 3 or Dark Souls in general are. And always, if you've enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to see what's coming out next. Take care everyone, thank you very much for watching.
Ashen One, hearest thou my voice still?